Hi guys, today we'll study the topic of carcinoma rectum. Starting with the anatomy of the rectum and the anal canal, and then we'll move forward to the TNM staging, and then we'll look at the imaging characteristics of CA rectum. Starting with the anatomy. Rectum typically extends between the pubococcygeal line and the sigmoid takeoff. What do we mean by pubococcygeal line? It is a line which is drawn from the lower end of the pubis to the tip of the coccyx. Hence, we call it a pubococcygeal line. And sigmoid takeoff is that point of the rectum where it is moving away from the sacrum. So the point where the rectum moves away from the sacral bone, we call it a sigmoid takeoff. We can see even in this image that this is the pubococcygeal line, which we call it as anorectal junction, and then this is our sigmoid takeoff. Okay. Now, moving forward to the anatomy of the anal canal, we should know that the rectum is continuing as internal anal sphincter, and then we have the pelvic floor, which is formed by the levator ani, right? So this is our levator ani. This levator ani continues as external sphincter. The distance between the internal sphincter and the external sphincter is the intersphincteric space. So this is the end of the anatomy of the anal canal. Moving to the next topic, that is mesorectal fascia and the peritoneal reflection. So rectum is completely surrounded by this red line, which is mesorectal fascia, and between the rectum and the mesorectal fascia it is filled with fat called as mesorectal fat. Understood? So, however, there is an exception to this, that rectum is surrounded by mesorectal fascia except the middle one third of the rectum. In its anterior aspect, it is surrounded by peritoneal reflection directly, and upper one third of the rectum in its anterior and lateral aspect is surrounded by the peritoneal reflection. So we can see in this image as well, where we can see that the lower rectum is completely surrounded by the mesorectal fascia. However, the mid rectum in the anterior aspect is surrounded by the peritoneal reflection, and in the upper one third of the rectum, the anterolateral part is surrounded by the peritoneal reflection. Understood? Now, what is the importance of knowing this fact? The importance is that if there is any tumor which is sitting in the upper or middle one third, that too on the anterior aspect, then if the tumor is extending beyond the rectum, it will go ahead and involve the peritoneal reflection directly, and this is going to upstage the tumor from T3 to T4 directly. So we'll now move forward and look at the TNM staging. So, coming to the TNM staging of carcinoma rectum. So, like any other tumor, T1 involves the submucosa, T2 involves the muscularis propria. T1 and T2, we cannot differentiate between these two things on an MRI rectum. So, what do we do in such scenario? Do an endoscopic ultrasound, and then you can tell the difference between a T1 stage and a T2 stage. So this is not the work of a radiologist. Now the work of the radiologist starts from T3 and above. So starting with the T3, we look at an example to understand the T3 disease. So this is the first case scenario where you can see that there is a T2 hypointense rim of the rectum. The breach of this T2 hypointense rim is when we call that there is involvement of the mesorectal fat. Once the mesorectal fat is involved, if the involvement is just 1 mm, meaning to say that the distance of the tumor beyond the T2 hypointense rim is 1 mm, we call it T3A. If it is between 1 to 5 mm, we call it T3B. If it is more than 5 mm and less than 15 mm, we call it T3C. And then if it is more than if it is more than 15 mm, we are going to call it T3D disease. Now that we understood the T3 disease, we need to look at what is mesorectal fascia involvement. So I've already explained you guys that rectum is surrounded by mesorectal fat, which is encapsulated in a mesorectal fascia, right? So when do we call that the mesorectal fascia is involved? Obviously, if the tumor is touching the mesorectal fascia, we will call it involved. However, if the distance between the tumor and the mesorectal fascia is less than 1 mm, even then we call it a positive mesorectal fascia involvement. So you can see in this example that this tumor is touching the mesorectal fascia and hence it is involved. However, if the tumor was going something like this and the distance was less than 1 mm, even then you would call it involved. Okay? If this distance was less than 1 mm, we will call it involved. Now that we understood what is a T3 disease, we'll look at what is a T4 disease. So T4A is involvement of the peritoneal reflection. We have already discussed that involvement of the peritoneum will upstage the disease. So this is something which is very important, guys. If you're seeing an anterior wall rectum carcinoma, so in that case, you should always think that if it's involving a fascia anterior to it, it is not a mesorectal fascia and it is a peritoneal reflection which is getting involved, right? So T4A is a peritoneal reflection involvement and T4B is all other surrounding organs. So we'll just look at an example. So we can see that this is an anterior wall CA rectum, right? And it is involving the fascia anterior to it. So this becomes the involvement of the peritoneum, which is a T4A disease. And in the second case, you can see that this is the tumor signal, which is involving the prostate. So this becomes a T4B disease. Now, there are some tumor prefixes which are given in the guideline. We'll just look at them. There are three prefixes which we use in our reporting: C, Y, and P. P we wouldn't use, it is a pathological prefix. C is the clinical staging. Y is what we radiologists use, that is after neoadjuvant chemotherapy or radiotherapy, when you are restaging it, when you do an MRI to restage the tumor, that is when you go ahead and use a Y prefix, right? And before we move ahead, we'll look at just a clinical aspect of carcinoma rectum, where we stratify the carcinoma rectum into low risk, intermediate risk, and high risk. If it is a low risk patient, that is T1, T2, T3AB, N0, N0, just do a surgery, that is total mesorectal excision. However, if it is an intermediate risk patient, you go ahead, give a short course of neoadjuvant radiotherapy and then do a surgery. But however, if it is a high risk patient, you are seeing involvement of non-regional nodes, you are seeing metastasis, it is an N2 disease, then give a long course of neoadjuvant radiotherapy, then you are going to restage it. I already told you, if you are restaging it, you have to use the prefix Y before you give the stage, and then you take a call whether to do a surgery or to continue the chemo radio, right? This is how you're going to treat the patient of a carcinoma rectum. Now we looked at the clinical aspect, right? Now coming to the radiology aspect, how do we acquire a case of CA rectum? Acquisition of CA rectum is very important because we have to talk about various structures surrounding it. Let it be the node, let it be some tumor deposit, let it be the involvement of the fascia, surrounding organs. If the plane is not normal, so then you won't be able to decide how are the fat planes with the surrounding structures. So coming to the plane of acquisition, which is the most important part in the acquisition of carcinoma rectum, the axis of acquisition should be parallel to the axis of the tumor. What do I mean to say? So this is the tumor here, right? this is the axis of the tumor. So the axis of the tumor and the axis of acquisition should be the same. They should be parallel to each other. And then you get a coronal plane. And you take perpendicular sections to this axis, you will get axial sections. And however, if a tumor, that is a cA rectum, is situated at an anorectal junction or in the anal canal, the axis of acquisition again will change. It will be parallel to the axis of the tumor, and then you take an axial cut like this, which is which is perpendicular to this axis. So this is very important, guys. How do you guys plan the acquisition of cA rectum? Because if the planning is not right, all of your staging will go wrong. Now, how do you prepare the patient? Before it was said that endorectal coil was a must. Now they've updated and they're telling there is no need to use any endorectal coil. You can either do it in a 1.5 Tesla or a 3 Tesla machine. Spasmolytics, previously they told you have to. Now they're telling, except if it's an upper rectal cancer, you do not have to give a spasmolytic. You can directly acquire a rectum cancer MRI acquisition. Now, looking at the sequences, there's an important statement I'm making now. Coming to the sequences, MR rectum always do a non-fat sat. You're looking at the fat planes with the surrounding structures. So it is very, very, very important, guys, that you do a non-fat sat irrespective of the sequence, whether it's a T1 sequence, T2 sequence, whatever might be the sequence, it should always be a non-fat saturated sequence. And coming to the contrast, contrast is not a must for carcinoma rectum evaluation. So it is optional if you want to give contrast or not, but it is not a must to evaluate a carcinoma rectum unlike other cancers, right? So coming to the sequences, the three most important sequences are T1 non-fat sat, T2 non-fat sat, diffusion with ADC. We've already discussed about the axis of acquisition. Now that you've acquired cA rectum, now we'll look at how do we report a case of carcinoma rectum. There are 7 main headings which you guys need to remember under carcinoma rectum. Starting with the morphology, you need to look at the location, you need to give the size, you need to give the TNM stagings. Till here, we have already discussed to some extent. So, there are few extra things which you need to specify in your report of a carcinoma rectum. That is EMVI. What is EMVI? Extramural vascular invasion, tumor deposit, and sphincter invasion, and the pelvic floor invasion. These are few points which you have to mention extra and they're specific for a carcinoma rectum. Now we'll discuss each of these headings in separate. Starting with the morphology. The most common type of a carcinoma rectum is an adenocarcinoma, right? The other types which are less common but can occur in the rectum are mucinous carcinoma and signet ring carcinoma. Mucinous and signet ring carcinomas have a bad prognosis when compared to an adenocarcinoma of the rectum. Adenocarcinoma can present as a polypoid growth or a sessile mass. If it's presenting as a polypoid growth, this is how you'll see. You'll see a polyp within the rectum. This is the rectal wall. This is the polyp within the rectum with a stalk. However, if it is presenting as a sessile mass, it can be semicircular involving a part of the rectum, leaving a part of the rectum behind, or it can have a circumferential, complete circumferential involvement. Coming to the mucinous carcinoma in rest of the body, it has a very good prognosis except in carcinoma rectum where it has a poor prognosis and it is intensely T2 bright and it would not show much contrast enhancement. And one more thing to note about a mucinous carcinoma, I guess I've told it before in my videos also that it does not show significant uptake on PET and hence should not be confused. I'll just show you an example, guys, for this. Sorry. Okay. Okay. We'll move forward to the signet ring carcinoma. Signet ring carcinoma will also have a long segment circumferential involvement. What is specific for a signet ring carcinoma is that signet ring carcinoma does not involve the mucosa. What do I mean to tell by this? I already told you that we can't differentiate if it's a submucosa muscularis propria properly on a MRI. But What do I mean by that? It does not involve the mucosa, it is a pure submucosal growth. Is that we can see on this example where this is the mucosa. I'll just use a different line. This black line you guys are seeing, guys, this is the mucosa. And this mucosa is very smooth. There's no breach in that mucosa. That T2 hypointense line is intact. However, in the submucosa, we can see this is the mass. This is what I mean to tell, that is a pure submucosal mass. The mucosa is very smooth. It is not irregular in a signet cell carcinoma, but however, it has the worst prognosis. And this appearance where you're seeing a smooth mucosa with a submucosal growth is called as a target appearance for a signet ring carcinoma. Now, moving forward. So, here we end with the morphology, coming to the location. So, we'll just understand with this example only. Obviously, we have to tell once we start off with the location that where is the tumor getting involved. So we can see here that the tumor is involving the anorectal junction, it is involving the mid, lower and extending into the upper rectum, right? That is the first point you need to mention for the location, that where is the tumor sitting. Is it in the upper, mid, lower, involving the anorectal junction or not? After that, you need to give the distance between the anorectal junction. So if we think somewhere here is the pubis, we have to give the distance from the anorectal junction to the lower end of the carcinoma rectum. Along with that, some radiologists also give the distance from the anal verge to the lower end of the tumor. And whenever you are measuring this distance, it has to be a curved line. Don't put straight lines and tell this is the distance from the anorectal junction, because that is not going to help the surgeon. And along with it, you have to always mention, is the peritoneal reflection involved or not. Next, we come to the axial section. In the axial section, what you need to mention is the o'clock position. This is the 12 o'clock position. This is basically 3, 6 and 9. You need to explain, if it's a circumferential growth, you will tell in its entire circumference. However, if the tumor was extending from here to here, then you will tell it is extending from 8 o'clock to 12 o'clock position. So you need to give the 8 o'clock position in your report as well. So we'll open the SAG image, mention the location, give the distances, give the size of the tumor, AP, CC, TR. Along with that, mention the o'clock position it's extending in the axial section. After this, we already discussed about the TNM staging. We already know how to give the TNM staging of a carcinoma rectum. Now moving forwards to the special things which we see in a carcinoma rectum. That is extramural vascular invasion. Extramural vascular invasion is basically when you're seeing a tumor signal in the vessel, you're going to call it an extramural vascular invasion. What do I mean by this? You can see that the tumor is typically sitting within the rectum, but however the tumor signal is extending along the vessel, guys. We'll see at this example also, you can see that there is a tumor signal which is extending along this vessel and it is very tubular in nature. So whenever you're seeing this appearance, you call it an extramural vascular invasion. Why is it important to mention about this, guys? There should be some importance, right, when it's given. The importance is that when you're doing a surgery, if you've left this vessel behind or if not resected this part of the tumor, it's going to come with a recurrence and metastasis. So it is very important you mention in your reports that there is an EMVI along with the carcinoma rectum. Coming to the next thing, that is tumor deposit. Tumor deposit is basically an irregular shaped tumor signal soft tissue mass which is sitting in the mesorectum. This can be an irregular shaped node. This is one of the drawbacks of the staging of carcinoma rectum, that we as radiologists cannot differentiate if it's an irregular shaped node or a tumor deposit. So as you can see in this example, you can see that there is this tumor signal which is very irregular shaped mass sitting in the posterior mesorectum. So this is what we call it as a tumor deposit, and we cannot differentiate if it's a tumor deposit or if it's a irregular shaped node. And if it is very round with smooth margins, this is what we call it an enlarged node. We'll talk about nodes in the next few minutes. Before that, we'll finish off the reporting format. In the reporting format, we are left with the last discussion, that is involvement of the sphincter. Sphincter, I've already explained you the anatomy. You have internal sphincter, you have an external sphincter, and you have a space in between them called as intersphincteric space. You need to mention all three, whether they're involved or not. Now we look at the examples to understand. So we can see that this is the tumor signal, right? This is the tumor signal, and this is extending into the internal sphincter. But however, you can see a clear fat plane, that is the intersphincteric space, which is clear without any tumor signal. And this is your external sphincter, which is the continuation of this levator ani muscle, which is also not involved. So in this case, we'll tell internal sphincter is involved. However, intersphincteric space and external sphincter are not involved. Coming to the second example. All of this is the tumor signal, right? Can you see the internal sphincter, intersphincteric space and the external sphincter here? No. However, on the left side, you can see that this is the external sphincter. The internal sphincter is involved. Intersphincteric space is also involved. But however, the external sphincter is uninvolved. So, on the right side, all three are involved. On the left side, external sphincter is not involved. However, the internal sphincter and the intersphincteric space is involved. Now we'll look at details of how we give a nodal involvement. Nodal involvement, remember, N0 is no node involved, N1 is 1 to 3 suspicious nodes, 1 to 3 I mean 1 to 3 in number. And then N2 disease is when there are more than 3 nodes which are getting involved. We are going to call it an N2 disease. Now, for any carcinoma, there are some set of regional nodes, or basically the nodes which are commonly involved for that cancer. And then you have something called as a non-regional nodes. So we can see here, I'll just look at an example to make you guys understand. So, what do I mean by regional nodes? Regional nodes are the nodes which are commonly involved for that tumor. Non-regional nodes are not something expected. If non-regional nodes are involved, again we upstage the disease and it directly becomes a metastatic lesion, right? This is very important, guys. Always look for a non-regional nodes, because involvement of a non-regional nodes says that it is a metastatic disease. Now we look at what are the nodes we should be looking at. Obviously, there's a mesorectum, there's mesorectal fat, and there are nodes within the mesorectal fat, which are mesorectal nodes, right? And then you have, this is the common iliac, external iliac, internal iliac, obturator nodes, inguinal nodes. Yeah, these nodes which are in yellow, that is the mesorectal nodes, are the central group of regional nodes. The internal iliac and obturator nodes are the lateral group of regional nodes. So, what I mean to say is the mesorectal nodes, the internal iliac and the obturator nodes form the regional nodes. So, there are only 3 sets of nodes which are regional nodes for C. erectum. The rest all nodes are non-regional nodes. So, anything other than these 3, mesorectal, internal iliac and obturator, anything other than these 3 nodes, call them non-regional, and if they are involved, call it a metastatic disease. So, now coming back to the text, this I think we've already discussed, regional and non-regional. We have the central nodes and the lateral nodes. Central are the mesorectal nodes, lateral are the internal iliac and the obturator nodes, and then we know that involvement of a non-regional node is a metastatic disease. Now, do we call any node as abnormal? No, right? Obviously, we can't call it. So, when do you label a node as suspicious or an abnormal node? I'll just show you an example for that first. If a node is having such irregular, indistinct margins, or if it is heterogeneous in nature, or if it is round, then we are going to call it suspicious. I'll just show you an example for the same. So in this node, you can see that it is very heterogeneous, right? It is not homogeneous, and it is round. So it has 2 out of 3 malignant characteristics. These are the 3 things which are indistinct margins, heterogeneous node, round node. In this we have, this is a round heterogeneous node. Now, if you are looking at a mesorectal node, and any mesorectal node more than 9 mm is suspicious, irrespective of if it is showing a malignant characteristic or no. Even if you're seeing a proper oval node, if it is having fatty hilum, whatever might be the characteristic, if it is more than 9 mm, call it suspicious in a case of a known carcinoma rectum. If it is between 5 to 9 mm, the size of the node, and it has two malignant characteristics, only then we call it suspicious. And however, if the size is even less than 5 mm, but it has all three suspicious characters, even then we call it a suspicious mesorectal node. And this criteria applies only for a mesorectal node, guys. However, if you're looking at the lateral nodes, if the size is just more than 7 mm, irrespective of whether it has malignant characteristics or not, you will still label it as a suspicious node. Now that we are done with even the nodal anatomy, when do we call it suspicious, whether we should give, we shouldn't give, what are the size criteria, this comes to an end of reporting of a primary carcinoma rectum. But we know that if it is a high risk carcinoma rectum, then you're going to give a long-term neoadjuvant chemoradiotherapy, and then you're going to restage it, and then you give a suffix Y to it. Then, whenever you're restaging it, how do you assess the response to the radiochemotherapy? This is what we'll study next. So, whenever you're talking about response, when you study a lot of tumors, you'll understand there are three types of response: complete response, intermediate response, and a poor response. So, when do you call something as a complete response? We'll look at an example first. So, in this example, you can see that there is this T2 intensely dark area, that is intensely hypointense area. And this area on diffusion restriction, it is not showing any diffusion restriction. This is what we call a complete response, where the tumor is replaced by fibrosis completely. So, in the second case scenario, here also you can see that there is a T2 hypointense signal, right? But however, on diffusion restriction, you're able to see some amount of diffusion restriction. So, there is some amount of fibrosis because it is T2 hypointense on a T2 weighted sequence. Along with it, there is even diffusion restriction. This is what you call it as an intermediate response. Coming to the poor response, on a T2 weighted sequence, you will see a tumor signal. There is very less or no fibrosis in that area, and it will show significant diffusion restriction. This is what you call it a poor response. And post neoadjuvant chemoradiotherapy, when do you call there is involvement of a mesorectal fascia? In a primary cancer, we told even if the distance between the tumor signal is less than 1 mm, it's not touching the fascia, also give it as MRF positive. Now, post staging, also we follow something similar. If you're seeing a tumor signal less than or equal to 1 mm from the fascia, give it involved. But however, post chemoradio, what happens is this lot of desmoplastic reaction around this carcinoma. In such case, if the fibrosis is touching the mesorectal fascia, even then we'll give it as a positive MRF. Coming to the nodes, post chemoradio, if the size is more than 5 mm or equal to 5 mm, irrespective of the presence of malignant characteristics, you tell it is a positive node, and then you give either N1 or an N2 disease. So guys, this is the end of carcinoma rectum. I guess you guys have understood it clearly. I was able to make you guys understand clearly this topic. If you guys like the way of our teaching, please do like, share and subscribe to our channel. Thank you.